7.2, factoring trinomials of the form x squared plus bx plus c. So in this section, we are factoring only 3 terms, and the coefficient in front of your x squared will be a 1 in this section. We have our 4 examples here, and then we have some of our steps. The first thing you want to check is make sure that you check the order for your trinomial, meaning you need to have it where the largest exponent is first, so largest exponent to smallest, x squared x and then c. Second step, factor out your greatest common factor. Third step, you need to figure out the signs for the 2 parentheses when you factor. So what we do to look at the sign, to figure out the sign, is look at the last term. If that last term is positive, as is in A or B, then you have to have the same sign, plus plus or minus minus. It's both positive if your problem has all positives, and we have 2 negatives if the second term is negative. The next option is if your last term, as in C and D, if the last term is negative, then you have to have opposite signs in the parentheses. It's always this way. It depends on the problem if the negative comes first or if the positive comes first. And the last thing you want to do is make sure that you check your answer. Factoring problems are very easy to check, so make sure you check. Let's take a look at the first example. What we want to do is factor completely. So step 1, we check to see if the order is correct, and in this case, this is written in the correct order. Next, we want to make sure that we check for a greatest common factor, which in this case we don't have. And so if we don't have a greatest common factor, what we do is we write out 2 parentheses. The last term is positive, so both signs have to be the same. In this case, both signs are positive. The only way to get y squared is to have a y here and a y here. And then we need to look at factors of 35 that will give us 12. And so if you look at 35, what are factors of 35? 1 and 35, and we have 5 and 7. So which of these 2 adds up to 12? That would be 5 and 7. So we have 5 and 7. In this case, it doesn't matter where we put the 5 or where we put the 7. Now you quickly check your work, which is really easy. Multiply the inner, which gives us 5y. Multiply the outer, which gives us 7y. If you combine those, we get 12y, which matches our middle term. And that would be it. So really quick to check. You can FOIL this out, and if we FOIL, we have to get back to the trinomial. But a faster way to check is just to make sure that you get the correct middle term by multiplying the inner and the outer, and then we add or subtract according to the signs. Next, we have x squared plus 5x minus 36. The order is correct. There's no GCF, so then we write 2 parentheses. Since the last term is negative, then we have opposite signs in the parentheses. I don't know if I should write plus or minus first, so you can just write plus here, minus here, and then we can figure out what numbers will be positive and which one will be negative. But to get x squared, should be x and x. You need to look at factors of 36 so that we get, when we subtract, we have to get a 5. So factors of 36, if you think about it, should in this case be 4 and 9. And if we subtract, we have to get a positive 5. So which number has to be positive would be the 9, and which number should be negative would be the 4. Because that's the only way to get a positive 5. And then of course if you check 9x, 4x, actually a negative 4x, and we combine those and we get 5x. So I know it works. Okay, next, example C. Again, in the correct order, no GCF, so again, 2 parentheses. That last number is negative, so I know I have opposite signs. X, X. We need factors of 27 that will give us a negative 6 when we subtract. So if you think about it, that would be 9 and 3. So in order to get a negative 6, the 9 has to be negative and the 3 should be positive. And then of course, if you check 3x, negative 9x, and of course we get negative 6x, which is what we wanted. And that's our final answer. Can box those. Okay, finally, last example. We have example D, and if I check the order, I see that the order is correct. Largest exponent to smallest, so 3, 2, 1, so the order is correct. There is a greatest common factor in this case, and so we need to carefully look at this. Your greatest common factor will be 7, because 7 divides 7, 7 divides 70, and 7 divides 168. There is also a GCF of y, because all 3 of these have at least one y. So we need to factor out our greatest common factor first, 7y, and then we're left in the parentheses y squared minus 10y plus 24. And then the trinomial that's inside the parentheses needs to be factored. We have one more step. Make sure you bring down your GCF, 2 parentheses. And now we look at this carefully. Since that last term is positive, I know by the sign rules that we need to have the same sign. So is it plus plus or is it minus minus? Look at the second term. Second term's negative, automatically tells me minus minus. We need a y, and we need factors of 24 that will give us a negative 10. And if you think about it, the factors that we need would be 6 and 4. And of course, when you check negative 6y, negative 4y, and that gives me a negative 10y, so it's correct. When you factor out your GCF first, make sure that you are looking at the trinomial that is in the parentheses. We are no longer focusing on the original problem. When you factor, you are factoring the trinomial in the parentheses, so be careful with that. And that would be it. So look for the next video, which would be factoring trinomials, where we have a coefficient here that is larger than 1.